Look, I get what you're probably thinking when you hear a wife call her husband's affection too much, but honestly, love can start to feel suffocating when you're already buried under everything else. There I was, stressed beyond belief, and he's still trying to grab my ass in the kitchen like we're teenagers. But apparently needing space makes me the villain in everyone's story. Nathan and I had this thing, right? That ridiculous spark that made our friends roll their eyes. He couldn't keep his hands off me. Seriously, I'd be making coffee and he'd press himself against me, whispering dumb like, God, you're so sexy in my ear. And yeah, fine at first it was flattering. Made me feel wanted. Sure. But here's the ugly truth about being with someone completely obsessed with you. It wears you down. I couldn't walk past him without being grabbed, kissed, or hearing another comment about my body. Even when I was buried in stress, there he was acting like I was his personal plaything. Work was brutal. My boss breathing down my neck, customers losing their minds, and I'd come home on empty. Did Nathan care? Of course not. The moment I stepped through the door, his hands were all over me, saying how much he missed me, how amazing I looked, even though I felt like garbage. I started pulling away, just trying to breathe. But Nathan treated that as a challenge. More surprise kisses, more random gropes, more romantic, that felt like harassment when I just wanted to pay bills or watch TV. And the way he played innocent made it worse. I'd be venting about my day and he'd start massaging my shoulders, which sounds sweet until his hands slid lower and he's kissing my neck while I'm mid-rant about the mess at work. Then he'd pout when I pulled away like I was rejecting him as a person, instead of just needing 5 minutes to exist untouched. Don't even get me started on his corny jokes. He'd mutter, "Marry me," as he passed, even though we were already married, or slip notes in my lunch about unwrapping me later. It was like living with a hormonal teenager who thought he was being romantic. Tried talking to him, explaining I needed space when I was stressed. His response, "But touching you is how I show love." Like that. Made it okay to ignore what I was asking for. Maybe I could have been clearer, but when you're drowning and someone keeps pushing your boundaries because it feels good to them, it stops being love and starts being selfish. He was getting his constant validation. But what about what I needed? The breaking point came after my district manager basically told me my job was on the line. I came home ready to cry, and Nathan's big move was pulling me into a clingy hug, kissing my face, insisting he'd make me feel better. I snapped, pushed him off, told him I needed space, that his constant touching was making things worse. He looked at me like I'd stabbed him. Actually, said, "Since when is loving my wife a bad thing?" That's when it hit me. He thought his needs were love, and my need for boundaries was me being difficult. After that fight, Nathan went full wounded puppy, barely touching me, walking on eggshells, afraid to get close. And honestly, it was exactly what I needed. But he had to make it weird. He'd reach for me, then pull back with this hurt expression, or stop mid-sentence when trying to flirt, like he was training himself not to be inappropriate. The drama was draining, but the space was a relief. For the first time in months, I could walk into my house and just exist. Work got better too. Without the stress of Nathan's non-stop neediness, I could focus on actually fixing things instead of just surviving. My numbers improved, my boss eased up, and I started feeling like myself again. But Nathan couldn't stand it. He'd throw out snide comments like, sorry for existing in my own house if I didn't cuddle him on the couch, or sigh like a martyr when I went to bed, without a nightly make-out. I tried to explain that I wasn't rejecting him, just asking for different ways of affection, talking more, doing things together, something other than him pawing at me every 5 seconds. But he acted like I was asking him to change who he was. I'm a physical person. That's how I connect, he'd say, as if I was obligated to be available whenever he wanted. Worst of all, he started framing it like he was doing me a massive favor by holding back, acting like I should be grateful, while also whining about how hard it was for him, how unnatural, how much he missed his wife. It made me feel guilty, which pissed me off. Here I was, finally breathing again, and he was making me feel selfish for protecting my sanity. And the weirdest part, I started liking the distance. Without that constant pressure to be sexually available, I rediscovered myself. I picked up books again, found hobbies, had the energy to see friends. It was like I'd been suffocating and finally remembered how to breathe. But Nathan saw my peace as proof that I didn't need him anymore. He'd toss out bitter remarks about how much better I seemed without his clingy affection. He'd twist my own words like setting boundaries was something to be ashamed of. The real shift happened about 3 months later. I'd had a fantastic day at work, hit my targets, got praised by my district manager, actually felt like I was thriving. I came home excited to share it. Nathan's first response: "Wow, you're glowing. Must be nice not having your gross husband smother you." Instead of celebrating with me, he was jealous that my happiness lined up with his forced restraint. That's when it clicked. It wasn't about affection. It was about control. He needed to be the reason I smiled. And when I found joy elsewhere, he couldn't stand it. When the company sent me to a week-long training, his reaction said it all. Instead of being proud I was chosen, he got sulky about me leaving. Joked I'd be thrilled to escape him. The trip was in Dallas, and honestly it felt like freedom. No tiptoeing around his feelings, no managing his moods, just me, focusing on work and being treated like a competent adult. That's where I met David, one of the trainers. Mid-30s, divorced, and the complete opposite of Nathan. Where Nathan was intense and overwhelming, David was calm, relaxed, easy to be around. We grabbed drinks. After sessions, talked about work, life, everything. And yeah, David flirted a little. Not pushy, not invasive, just light, grown-up flirtation. Compliments that felt sincere. Attention that felt chosen, not desperate. When he touched my arm mid-conversation, it wasn't possessive. It was simple. It was nice. I knew what was happening. But after months of being told my need for space made me cold. Having someone appreciate me without trying to consume me was intoxicating. Nothing happened. Not really. Just drinks, easy talk, some lingering glances. But the way it reminded me what it was like to be desired without being smothered stuck with me. To be heard for my thoughts instead of pawed at for my body. When I got home, Nathan was waiting by the door like a dog, demanding every detail. "Touch me, reconnect," he insisted, and I couldn't. The difference was too sharp. His neediness, which I tolerated, now felt like suffocation all over again. He immediately sensed it. "What's wrong? Did something happen?" he pressed, suspicious like he owned my emotions. It grated on me. I told him nothing happened, which was technically true, but I saw the way he dissected my tone, searching for betrayal. The concern felt more like an interrogation. That night he Tried initiating sex for the first time in months. Not gently, but in this desperate, territorial way that made my skin crawl, like he had to stake a claim after I'd been gone. When I wasn't enthusiastic, he got wounded. "I thought you missed me," he said, as if my willingness to sleep with him was the only proof of love. To him, reconnecting meant sex, not conversation, not closeness. Just his needs, his insecurity, his craving to feel wanted. I couldn't help comparing how David had asked thoughtful questions about my work, while Nathan only wanted to know if I'd missed him. How David's touch had felt respectful, while Nathan's felt like grabbing. How free I'd felt being myself, versus how drained I felt managing Nathan's emotions. And the worst part, I hadn't missed Nathan at all that week. If anything, it felt like relief. Coming home to his constant demands was like drowning again. That's when I started questioning the marriage. Not because of David, exactly, but because Dallas showed me how life could feel when I wasn't managing someone else's hunger every second. And I liked it a lot. The final straw came a month later. Nathan had slipped back into his old routine, constant, touching, possessive affection, using my body like stress relief. Except now I couldn't pretend it was romantic. I caught myself thinking about David more than I should. Not fantasies, just remembering what it was like to talk without everything turning sexual. We'd even exchanged a few friendly work emails, and those small connections felt more fulfilling than most of my moments with Nathan. One night, I was paying bills at the kitchen table, stressed, focused, and Nathan came up for another one of his surprise neck kisses. When I stiffened, he kept going. If anything, he doubled down like my resistance was just foreplay. "Nathan, stop. I'm busy. Come on, babe, you've been tense. Let me help you relax." His hands kept wandering, ignoring every word, like my voice was background noise to his fantasy. I shoved him harder than I meant to. "Stop. Why can't you listen when I say no?" That's when he snapped. The sad puppy act vanished, his voice full of anger. "You never want me anymore. You act like I'm some predator for wanting my own wife. Wanting affection is fine. Ignoring no is not," I shot back. "When do you ever say yes? When is it a good time for you?" he demanded. And honestly, he wasn't wrong. I couldn't remember the last time I wanted his touch. But instead of asking why that was, I got defensive. "Maybe because you make it feel like an obligation. Everything turns sexual with you. I can't even vent about work without you making it foreplay." "That's marriage," he snapped. "Couples are supposed to be intimate, to support each other." Support would have been listening, not grabbing me while I was trying to talk. We circled the same arguments, both of us sharper, both dragging old resentments into the fight. He said I'd changed, that I used to love his attention, that I was punishing him for being attracted to his own wife. I fired back about his neediness, how he never read the room, how suffocating his constant demands had become. And then I crossed a line. In the heat of it, I said something I'd thought but never intended to say out loud. "Maybe I wouldn't need so much space if you weren't so desperate all the time. It's honestly creepy how much you need validation from me." The word creepy landed like a punch. His whole expression shifted, and I knew I'd gone too far. Not because it wasn't true, but because I'd said it in the cruelest way. "Creepy," he repeated quietly. "My wife thinks I'm creepy for loving her." I tried to backpedal, to say I meant the behavior, not him, but it didn't matter. Something shut off in his eyes. He didn't yell anymore, just looked at me like he finally saw me clearly and didn't like what he saw. "Good to know where we stand," he said, and walked out. That night he slept in the guest room. And instead of guilt, I felt relief, like I could finally stop pretending this was fixable. The weeks that followed were the most honest our marriage had ever been, which is probably why it ended so quickly. Nathan stopped pretending to be okay, and I stopped pretending I wanted to fix it. He went cold. Not angry, not wounded, just detached. He'd come home, eat in silence, then vanish into his office or the guest room. When I tried small talk, bills, schedules, normal life stuff, he gave me the bare minimum. Polite. Distant. Like I was a roommate he barely tolerated. Part of me was relieved. No more managing his moods, no more defending my need for space. But another part was unsettled by how easily he switched off. Like all his declarations of needing me constantly had just been manipulation. I found myself reaching for David more. At first, just about work. Then, gradually, more personal things. He was in the middle of his own divorce, understood what it felt like to watch something fall apart. Our emails got longer, more frequent. I looked forward to them in a way I knew I shouldn't. Nathan noticed. He saw my mood lifting and made a bitter joke about how much happier I seemed without his creepy affection. I didn't deny it. The real end came on a Tuesday. Nathan walked in from work and found me laughing at something on my phone, one of David's emails. Instead of asking what was funny, he just stared with this cold calculation. "We need to talk," he said, sitting across from me like we were negotiating a contract. I knew what was coming, but I let him speak. "I don't think this is working anymore. We're not compatible sexually, and apparently I'm too creepy to be around." I could have fought him. Suggested counseling again. Tried to save it. But instead I felt an enormous sense of relief. "You're probably right," I said. He looked startled, like he'd expected me to beg. But I was done pretending. "I've been thinking the same thing. We want different things. You need more physical connection than I can give, and I need more space than you'll ever be comfortable with." We talked logistics calmly, who would move out, him, how to split things, when to tell people. Weirdly civilized for two people ending a marriage. The only flicker of real emotion was when I said maybe we'd both be happier with people who matched us better. Something flashed in his eyes. Hurt, maybe. Or suspicion. "Already got someone in mind?" he asked, his voice sharp. "It's not about someone else," I lied. "It's about us not working." He moved out that weekend. No drama, no blow-up, just boxes and awkward politeness. And when he left, instead of sadness, I felt like I could breathe for the first time in years. That night, I texted David. Told him I was getting divorced, that things had been over for a long time, that I was ready for a fresh start. He called instead of texting back, and we talked for 2 hours about everything and nothing. 3 months later, when the divorce was finalized, David flew in for a weekend. It wasn't serious, just two adults enjoying each other's company, seeing what it could be without the weight of marriage or distance. It felt easy, so much easier than anything with Nathan ever had. But after 4 months, reality set in. Long distance is brutal, even without a marriage in the background. The spark we had over late-night calls and weekends didn't hold up against real life. His messy divorce, custody battles, constant travel. My own adjustment to single life. We were both rebounding. Eventually, we admitted it wasn't going anywhere. The breakup was mutual and mature, which somehow stung more. With Nathan, even the ending had intensity. With David, it just fizzled. Like we'd been playing at what a relationship could be, without ever building something real. I threw myself into work, into figuring out what I wanted instead of just running from what I didn't. That's when I met Michelle. At a coffee shop. She was muttering into her phone about being stood up. We started talking, and for the first time in ages, I felt genuinely curious about someone. She was confident without being clingy, funny without trying too hard. And when she asked for my number, it felt natural in a way that surprised me. Dating Michelle wasn't what I had imagined. Not only physically, but emotionally. She didn't expect me to always be available or manage her fears. She had her own path, her own hobbies, and didn't need me to prove her worth or complete her life. For a while I felt like I'd finally understood things. Found someone who matched my craving for space while still offering connection. Michelle never drowned me in affection, or made me feel guilty for protecting my limits. Being with her felt light, not like a chore. But then she started to step back, making remarks about how I never really let her in, how I kept her at a distance even when we were close. She said I seemed better at explaining what I didn't want from love than at saying what I actually did want. It's like you're still living in reaction to your ex-husband instead of deciding who you are, she told me in our last honest talk. Every time we near closeness you build walls. Her words hurt because I knew they were right. I'd been so used to shielding myself from Nathan's endless need that I'd never learned how to be open with someone who wasn't draining me. Michelle ended it with a text 2 weeks later. She said she cared, but felt like she was with someone still more focused on not being an ex-wife than on being a real partner. That's when Nathan's friend Tyler messaged me, clearly guilty, and admitted Nathan had met someone new at work, a nurse named Rachel, who thought he was the kindest man she'd ever dated. Tyler said Nathan seemed brighter than he had in years, like he'd finally found someone who valued his constant affection. The twist. Rachel told everyone how secure and cherished Nathan made her feel, how she loved his attentiveness, the very things I'd called suffocating. She saw them as romantic. 2 years after our divorce, I bumped into them at the supermarket. Nathan looked healthy, peaceful in a way I'd never witnessed. Rachel laughed at his joke, leaned into him while they picked fruit, and kissed his cheek lightly just because, and he lit up as if she'd handed him the stars. They didn't notice me, but I stayed a moment. I saw the way he rested his hand on her back as they walked, how she squeezed his fingers in public. All the gestures I once labeled overwhelming, she was initiating half the time. She wanted his devotion, standing there with groceries for one, watching my ex glow with someone who celebrated what he had to give. My chest sank. It wasn't just incompatibility with Nathan. It was unkindness. I'd taken a man who adored me and made him feel dangerous for it. I'd mocked his affection as creepy when the truth was I simply didn't want love that intense from him. And now he had someone who did. Someone who saw his steadfastness as a blessing, not a weight. Someone who didn't need escape from love, but wanted to be wrapped in it. I never learned how to want someone with the same depth Nathan had wanted me. Every relationship since has been my attempt at balancing closeness with freedom, never getting it right. I excel at saying what I don't want, but I fail at creating what I do. The harshest part. I still believe he could be too much, yet seeing him be just enough for someone else proved it wasn't him, it was me. And there's nothing left to do but accept that I let go of someone who would have given me everything, simply because I couldn't accept being loved that completely. Truthfully, I doubt I ever could. Some people aren't meant for that level of devotion. I only wish I'd understood it before I ruined us both, trying to force what I wasn't built for.